I'd like to call to order the Town of McCandless meeting for August 9th, 2021. The Pledge of Allegiance will be led by Councilmember Taro.
Pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we have quite a few announcements today, but our first one is a presentation from Senator Lindsey Williams.
Thank you. Is this good?
Perfect.
All right. Thank you very much for inviting me here today to present this certificate in recognition of McCandless's award for the 2021 Governor's Award. I just wanted to read this. It's from the Senate of Pennsylvania. Whereas the Senate of Pennsylvania is always pleased to recognize those esteemed communities which through adherence to the highest standards of service contribute in a meaningful way toward a better and more productive society. And whereas the town of McCandless is being honored by the Governor's Center for Local Government Services in the Department of Community and Economic Development with a Governor's Award for Local Government Excellence in the category of Information Technology. Whereas the town of McCandless has earned this great honor in recognition of its creativity and accomplishments, as well as its continuous efforts to improve community life and meet the many challenges which it faces. To its great credit, the town recently added new channels of information sharing and increased depth and breadth of shared information. The town of McCandless made improvements to its website, created a new Facebook page and YouTube channel, began utilizing the Savvy Citizen application, and is developing a Twitter account and town television channel. Say that 3 times fast. Efforts that increase the number of participants on citizen boards. Now, therefore, the Senate of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania commends the town of McCandless upon its richly deserved recognition, offers best wishes for continued success in the years to come. So I just wanted to congratulate you. Such a great effort to improve our communication. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much on behalf of the town, on behalf of, I thank Brian Sullivan for nominating the town and our progressive council and administration for all the foresight that they saw to help this happen, to move us forward, to increase our communication and to just give us some things. So, great work. Thank you so much. Yeah. Well, I'm just gonna stay here. So I was reading the paper and I was reading an interesting article about a impressive young woman that was had received a scholarship from the President Foundation. So I'm always interested to find out where these excellent people live and if they're in McCandless. And it just so happened that this young woman lived in McCandless, so she lived in my ward. So I, after reading all of her accomplishments, which I will go over, I said she needs to be nominated for a citizen. So I myself wrote it up and nominated her. So her public service and generosity is what really impressed me the most. A few things that I just want to mention because we could stay here apparently quite a while is since 2014, every birthday that she has had, instead of people bringing her gifts to her birthday, she's had to bring Easter basket for the children of the North Hills Community Outreach. She has volunteered for St. Alexis Aquinas Academy, Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation, Little Sisters of the Poor, Statues of Caring, Lifeline Mission, Yellow Ribbon Girls, and Temptation Home. Her service activities include a 5-week drive that she put together for peanut butter and jelly, a food drive for the North Hills Community Organization. She's baked cookies for our troops. She served meals at soup kitchens. She's built a free library at the North Community Outreach for their outdoor vegetable garden. And in her spare time, she's rescued sea turtles She's made seatbelt pillows to cover chemotherapy ports for chemo patients. And I realized not very many people would realize how neat that is. So that was very impressive how she was so sympathetic to that. So would you please come forward? Oh, I forgot the certificate. I'm so excited. So this is Sydney Kowalski, and what your Citizen Award says is that in recognition of your history of community service, including building a free library, sponsoring Easter baskets, and the food drive for the North Hills Community Outreach, service projects for Little Sisters, brief summary, Sisters of the Poor, Yellow Ribbon Girls, and Ascension Home, and involvement and now in an international Girl Scouts of America and the Juvenile Diabetes Research Foundation. She was this award. Sydney's going to be attending Walsh University in Ohio and studying nursing. Yeah. So I not only welcome you into the Citizen Hall of Fame, but into professional nursing.
I really don't do service for, getting awards, but it's really nice to be recognized. And there's such a need for people to do service. Like, just everywhere you look, there's so many organizations to reach out to. So, yeah, if I can inspire somebody, then hopefully I can pay it forward.
All right, seminars and conferences. I went out of order just a little bit here. Seminars and conferences. I think council has received some information for a November conference. If they're interested, please get in touch with Bob. Other announcements. McCandless Community Day is September 11th. The town trot is going to be at NA's Intermediate School. All proceeds are going to go to the volunteer fire departments in McCandless. You can, if you sign up by August 11th, you can get a discount. The car cruise is also at the Intermediate School from 2 to 6. There will be a World War II presentation at the Heritage Center at 5:30. There will be an observance for first responders at 7 p.m. and fireworks at 8:15. Backpack and school supplies are still being collected in the town foyer through August 11th from 9 to 5 while the doors are open here at town to help some of the students that need a little extra assistance getting their school supplies in order. The Heritage Center is doing a program on growing up with baseball. That's August 12th at 7 p.m. Our National Night Out, if you missed it, was really a very successful event. Seeing all the fire trucks and our officers and joy, it was quite an event. We plan on do those every year, so please, hopefully you can make it next year. Tennis Clinic still has a couple of openings for August 14th. You can register on the website. It's 10 to 11:30, August 14th. Suburban Whitetail Management Hunters are looking for hunters to participate in their program in McCandless. You can contact their website if you're interested. The Citizen Police Academy also has a couple of more openings. That will be September 16th through November 4th, 6 to 9 p.m. You can register online. Remember that the police department is still accepting unwanted or expired prescription drug collection down in the police department. And we have committee positions open for the EAC, will be Planning Commission, the Heritage Center, and the Activities Committee. And our blood drive, we had 30 participants. We got a lot of things going on in McCandless, a lot of good things. That's all the announcements that I have. We can move on to the meeting minutes. Are there any additions or edits from any member of council to the minutes? All right, hearing none, is there a motion to accept the minutes as submitted?
So moved.
Okay. Okay. All right, all those in favor indicate of accepting the minutes as they stand, indicate by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, next is a public hearing on the SIPL easement agreement. And I believe we have Mr. Graham here who's going to start us off with that.
Good evening, Dan Graham, and Archie McConnell here for Village at Marketplace LLC, technically, which is SIPL Enterprises owned by Gary Sipple, which get down to the heart of it. That's doing this. I'll keep this very short. This is sort of a win-win project for the township and for the developer, and that the Pine Creek behind on this property and an unnamed tributary will be the stream bank will be restored and stabilized. And that will count for credit for a project that Mr. Sipple has going on in the township, but he'll do all the work here at no cost, and the township will have that as part of the project that you have on your books taken care of. So, and we've gone through the easement agreement. Steve and I have worked through that. He made some changes that were all fine. I believe the engineers have looked at the plans and approved them. And we're just asking that the ordinance be adopted so the easement agreement can be approved and submitted to the Army Corps of Engineers and Department of Environmental Protection for approval. And we'll be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Are there any comments or questions from council? We are thrilled with this this project, and thank you.
Well, on behalf of Gary, we thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to do it. As we said, it's one of those rare win-wins in development world.
It is.
So thank you.
And now we'll have two public comment sessions tonight, and because this is a public hearing, so we're open to public hearing comments about this topic right now. And then once we close this public hearing, if you have comments about anything else, you can talk then. So are there any members of the public that would like to make any comments? All right. Second chance for council members. It's all kind of awesome. We thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, we'll adjourn the public hearing, and now we have the public comment time on an agenda item or just anything else that anyone is interested in speaking on. We'll start with the citizens who are present in person. Is there anyone that has any public comment? All right. Do we have anyone signed up in the chat box? We do not. Okay. All right, then. Let's move on to report of committees. Public Safety Committee.
Yes, I will take that one. Chief's report is in your packet. Well, I guess just going down the list, Fire Marshal's report, code enforcement. Those are all in your packet. If anybody has any questions, feel free to ask. Personnel board.
We are almost finished interviewing for the to fill the personnel board position, and we're going to start sergeant's interviews this next week.
Volunteer firefighters steering committee. I don't think there's any update with that. And police community engagement ad hoc committee.
I think in essence, everyone saw that in action last Tuesday night with the National Night Out. So that, I think that would be the report of the ad hoc committee.
may I?
Please.
In response to the National White Night Out, I will send a photo to Chief Hawk, but my cousin's children attended, and the day after that, they wore their police T-shirts. They were so excited and had such a great time here. And from everybody I spoke with, they also really enjoyed the evening. It was a great event.
It was, thank you to everyone who put that together. Everybody who took part. It was awesome.
Facilities management.
The Public Works Activity Report is included in your packets. Does anyone have any questions about that? Okay, Environmental Advisory Committee.
The minutes are in everyone's packet. Any questions from the council?
How are we doing on our tree and shrub planting guide?
I'll know more after Wednesday night's meeting. Admittedly, it is a bit belated, but the two parties working on it committed after the last meeting to try to get it done and delivered over for councils or planning commissions consideration.
Thank you. That really helps planning commission, so we don't have to go through all the plants that they're.
Excuse me, Madam President,
Yes.
on that issue, since you asked, should the EAC present their quote recommendation to planning commission, or should it be planning commission and council, or to council?
I think letting council see it and just have a head nod to it would be fine.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah.
I'll make sure it gets sent out to both groups with an opportunity for feedback.
That would be perfect. Thank you.
Technology Advisory Committee, those minutes are in your packets. Does anyone have any questions?
Love the informational articles. They're
Yes,
great.
they're very good.
Very good.
And Stormwater Management Ad Hoc Committee.
Tonight, somewhat delayed because of some longer, agendas that we had, is going to be the presentation by our engineers on the stormwater ordinance and an introduction to the stormwater utility concept. That's coming along later tonight. And Mr. Grimm has been working with the Army Corps of Engineers. I believe there has been a conference call, preliminary meeting call, and there is an on-site meeting scheduled for tomorrow morning to review the Pine Creek watershed with the Army Corps of Engineers, with the hope that they will be interested in, participate in, join us in trying to figure out some solutions to our stormwater flooding issues in particular. Mr. Grimm, do you have anything you want to add to that?
I think you did an excellent job explaining.
All right. That's all that I have.
Services Committee.
Mr. Smith?
The minutes for the last approved minutes for MTSA Sewer Authority are in your packets. If anyone has any questions, feel free.
Okay. No questions. The Ambulance Authority minutes, financials, and agenda for the June meeting is in council's packet. I would just, more to come, I would just remind council that the authority is continuing their efforts to want to work with all affected communities and in attempting to secure additional financing or additional contributions from each of the 5 communities that it services. And I believe that we will be hearing more from them shortly.
The Northland Public Library, the approved minutes from June and the agenda from July are both in your packets, as well as the executive director's report from July. If you have some questions, please let me know.
All right, hearing none, let's move on to old business. Did you want to go over the details of what this motion means, or?
Sure. In regard to letter 8A, the resolutions to enter into an agreement with the redevelopment authority regarding Wall Park. This is a project that was originally funded through Speaker Cherzai and funds that had been acquired by the Ingomar Franklin Park Athletic Association. And they had hoped to be able to do some improvements at Wall Park with this funding. They have realized, because of the complexity of the compliance aspect of the grant, that it's something beyond what they can do. So that combination, with the combination of that realization and the fact that this is actually town property, they approached us about assigning the grant over to the town to administer as opposed to the association to administer. This formalizes that agreement, where the funds will come in, the project won't be any different. We'll make improvements to the Wall Park ball fields that will include ball field upgrades, dugouts, and some drainage efforts down there. So the project doesn't change. It's just a matter that the funding and the project will be administered through the town as opposed to the association. Any questions on that?
I just, a clarification, I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. If I read it correctly, unlike many grants that we apply to where there's a matching component, maybe as much as 50 to 15, this looked like our total output would be just in some engineering and administrative fees of like 22,000 to get to 50.
Correct.
Yeah, good deal.
Are there any other questions? Is there a motion? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt tentatively identified resolution number 13 of 2021 to enter into a contract with the Redevelopment Authority of Allegheny County to fund improvements to Wall Park in the amount of $250,000 through the Gaming and Economic Development Fund.
Is there a second? Second. All right, again, any questions, comments? It's just an evening of all good news, isn't it? All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Discussion of the status of Route 19 sidewalk project. Is Dan gonna do that for us, or?
Yeah, if you want to come up to chime in anytime, Dan, feel free.
He looks a little surprised.
I'll sort of preface any remarks here. You know, this has been an ongoing project, and as the council is aware, we had obtained funds through a multimodal grant through PennDOT, a little over $400,000 to install sidewalk from roughly the Firestone store on Route 19 down to Longview Avenue. And as Gateway started putting a pencil to paper and looking at the site a bit more, we started to see that the price was going to escalate to roughly $85,000 to $100,000 more than the grant monies that we had. So we've taken quite a while, looked at alternative options or alternatives for us, other routes, any possibility of how we could make that work for the town. And at this point, we really don't have any viable solution other than if we were to move ahead, an option that the town always has is to assess the adjacent properties, that balance of the funds that would be needed to pay for that project. So the town, or the decision that we have to make here at this point would either be move forward with the project with the idea that we perhaps assess those adjacent property owners, and there's like 5 or 6 of them, if I remember right, Dan. And to the tune roughly of $12,000 to $15,000 a piece is where that number would come in. Or approach PennDOT with the help of Senator Williams and or Representative Mercury to change the scope of the project to have a sidewalk installed in another location that might make sense to us. So those are the options in front of us. Part of the discussion, I think, that would be legitimate to have is other possible locations, so that we can, if we wanted to look at that, Gateway could provide us with some budget estimates to see if the project could be funded, with a potential project could be funded with the available grant funds, or, whether we move forward on Route 19 somehow or another. Is that a fair summary?
I think that's a fair summary. 3 of those 5 properties are still R2, so they are not commercial. So we would be assessing those properties who are residential properties. That doesn't seem, I'm concerned about that. So this is a time for discussion. So Gateway needs to know where we stand on this and where we want to go forward on this. Can we have the sidewalk map up, please?
Probably.
The other thing to think about on this is that when we redo our zoning, it is possible, we don't know yet, that it would be commercial all along that corridor, and that as improvements were made on those properties, the commercial property owners would be required in their improvements to put the sidewalks in like we have done with the other businesses. And of course, that would be on their dime. So as part of their property improvements. So I want to hear from you all.
I mean, I wouldn't want to assess anyone, residential or commercial now, especially. I'd much rather have a project where we're going to do however that is, whether it's another location or, finding additional funds for this or however it works. I would not want to assess property owners.
Okay.
I have a question, irregardless of where the money would come from, would we also need to have, especially from these private property owners, a change, would we have to acquire the property to put the sidewalks on?
No.
Or would that be,
Okay. It'd all be
it's
within
all in the
right
right of way? Okay, because it's very close in this stretch.
I think there would be some impact in the commercial properties. There'd be some impact to the parking. Would, in essence, push some of the parking back
Right.
into the property a little bit. The biggest impact is in the 3 currently residential areas. And that's because of the topography there. We would have to reshape that and put up a retaining wall. It becomes costly
Yeah.
to do that. And frankly, we would run into a situation if somebody does buy those properties and wants to develop it, sidewalk requirement could be part of that development.
I have a question.
Councilmember Miles?
I just want to make sure I understand. So that we have a grant.
Correct.
And so it seems to me, I guess, so this is kind of a question and clarification. So we have a grant that isn't sufficient to do what we originally contemplated to do. In fact, the amount is significantly more than what we thought we would be able to do.
Correct.
So it seems to me that there's a question, how long can the grant sit out there without being utilized? When does it go away, or does it ever go away? And depending on the answer to that question, I think there's a good, this is an important, this sidewalk extension, I believe, was viewed as a very important, high profile area to put sidewalks in. And so there's a decision, it seems to me there's a decision to make between trying to talk to our representatives and wait and see if they can come up with the money to fill the gap, or convert that money over to a new project, in which case the questions I think that I don't know that probably need to be looked at with council's input, with our engineers input, with your input, with Jeff's input is what are the other priorities? And what can we, based on those priorities, what will the grant do for us?
Yeah.
So we know that Ross has a multimodal grant that they have been trying to figure out what to do with for 3 or 4 years. So we know we have some time. We'd have to look and see exactly how much time, but we know that we do have some time. So we're not in danger of losing it this week. Having said that, we have a lot of places that absolutely that we could use this now. We actually had a meeting with Senator Williams to look to see what could happen. She feels like that she could possibly get the grant changed so that it could be used in another place, because it was site specific. We put for the sidewalk out here and then for that one. And that has been done before. And she feels like that's something that she could possibly get done. So if we decided we didn't want to put it there, if we wanted to use it some other place and then wait and let, when these properties get redeveloped, then they'll put in the sidewalks like we've done other places, or apply for another grant that would give us enough so that we didn't have to add to it or assess the properties, that she seemed pretty confident that we would be able to put that money in another section of sidewalk. And this was part of the purpose that we had this. In fact, that original discussion 2 years ago is what this idea for this sidewalk inventory came from, is because we didn't know where we had sidewalks, and we didn't know where we needed sidewalks, and we didn't know what was dangerous or where there were breaks in sidewalks where we could just put in 15 feet of sidewalk and make a connection. So that's what this is about. So if we decided we wanted to have the engineers look and see where can we get $300,000 worth of sidewalk for a complete project, then we would have to charge them with that, but they need some direction from us. And that's what we're here tonight to decide, if we're going to, what we want to do with this. We need to make some decisions. Additional comments?
I guess follow-up question. Do we have other potential areas that we've kind of earmarked as being, somewhere around the same level of importance or same priority level to try to get sidewalks done?
So that is what the red is on this map. These are areas that Gateway, and jump right in here if I'm doing it wrong, Dan. Okay. I knew you weren't like doing something
He's saying
bad.
Bob blindsided me.
So the red places on the map, the blue places are places that have sidewalks. The green places are developments that are putting in sidewalks. And the red places are places that Gateway has said, hey, these places could really use some sidewalks. So now
Is there like a prioritization?
that's what
rank?
there's, so we've not gotten that far, but
Okay.
that's what, so what we had asked them to do is to rank them by like danger, use, some kind of point system. So we can say this person, this sidewalk has 94 points. The other thing we wanted to do, or the other thing that I asked them to do, is to measure the distance of these segments so that we could say, what is the cost of cement right now? We have enough money to do 30 feet. Where do we have the most important 30 feet?
Right.
You know what I mean? So we kind of back into it, like how much
Yeah.
money we have kind of back into it. So this is why you see this, and it's awesome. Senator Williams just went on about what a great thing this was and how other communities, she's gonna took a copy of this to share with other communities what we're doing. It's not finished. This is just what we have so far. So
Because the one that comes to mind, just because it's been in front of us, is the down on Thompson Run Road, where, you know, we're having the developer put in a sidewalk and the developer expressed concerns of it's going to be a sidewalk to nowhere. Well, maybe, you know, if we have some kind of prioritization done, maybe there's certain targeted areas we can look at first and say, does it make sense here? That's just the one that immediately pops to my mind
right.
for that reason.
And if we wanted Gateway to say, hey, give us 4 places where this money would complete a sidewalk, and you know, and tell us why you gave us these 3 places, and then we could say, we take number 2. We could, you know, and that would help us to maybe give us 3. Dan, am I volunteering you for things that are actually possible for you to do?
No.
Can you actually do this? Because that has nothing to do with me asking you to do it.
With this map, we're very easily, we think that we can pull up a similar project that is more feasible and will, you know, be within the grant funding. So that would be the goal. And Mike did report back to me that the grant is still, there's time left on the grant and we can easily get an extension on it. So that's the second part of it. So I think we could come back with, you know, giving you some options to look at that would have the same cost, if everybody's okay with that.
We need to decide that we're going to move forward with moving it before we start spending more engineering money on top of money. So we need to decide about that. If we want to say, you know what, let's just wait on this, or let's move forward with this. But we need to make that decision first before we start pouring more money into finding these places. So I'd like to hear from you all. This is a discussion. This is not like a voting, but we could take an informal head nod. And would that be enough?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So do you want, all right, so what are we saying? Do we want to leave this for right now and look for a new place for this project? I'm looking over here now. What do we got?
I because it's my ward that
Yeah,
we're abandoning here.
Yeah.
I guess I in my opinion, I would like to see it all. I think that the engineering money is absolutely not wasted by looking at other sidewalk projects, because, you know, we're committed under our comprehensive plan to support intermodality improvements. We will be continuing to seek grants, and I would like to, so we may move it. That's fine. I'm just saying, I wouldn't, I think it's fine to spend the money to get more discrete information and prioritization of what we need to do globally. And at the same time, I would be interested in also exploring, seeing, trying to work with our representatives or others to see if there's any kind of grant funding that can fill the gap to complete the project that we originally contemplated.
We were not giving much encouragement on that from our representative today.
Well, that's new news to me.
Well,
Because
and that's.
I was
was
under
new
the
news to
impression
us.
that they had been spoken to and they were somewhat optimistic. So that, and maybe it was talking about, I misunderstood, and it was what you were referring to earlier, which was being able to convert it to another location.
We just had the meeting just prior to this, and that's where we just got the
I
information.
think the intent of the meeting, or at least part of the intent of the meeting, was to see if there was funding available, and
Right, there does not seem to
there
be.
doesn't
Right.
seem to be.
And you don't have that information because it just happened. Sorry.
Well, given that information, like I said, I support having a, in any event, going forward with prioritizing, intermodality sidewalk needs.
Okay. Move forward. Go ahead.
I would agree with Councilperson Smonnels. I think this is a critical area that needs, I've heard many residents talk about it, students and so forth. I know my own children have walked on this stretch and it's troubled me. But at the same time, I don't think we can ask, number one, private citizens. And I think even if the thought crossed our mind to ask businesses as well, we'd be setting a precedent where why aren't we asking, I'm looking at this map, some other institutions and businesses to do the same if it's a priority for our community. So I would say if we are going to ever ask a business in the post, looking back to do something like this, we need to be ready to have it happen throughout the town as well.
It's a good point. Good point. Councilmember Woods? Yes, nod? No nod.
What were we saying yes to? Is this the?
We were saying to leave this currently and move forward with looking for other sites to use the multimodal grants.
I'd like to know what the other sites are. So I think I'm with Councilmember Sponholz on having a little more information before deciding what the other, where else we could spend $300,000.
Okay, so you're saying you don't want, so the choice is moving forward with the, I'm unclear as to what you're saying, I'm sorry.
I'd just like some more information first about what, if we're going to move forward with something else, where would it be?
Well, of course, but we have to direct them to do that. That's what we're deciding right here
I'd
to
like
direct them.
I'd like to find what the other places are then.
Okay, all right, all right, so I think,
Yeah, Mike indicates there's very easily, there's 3 or 4 other major places that need sidewalks, that you can very come up with something.
perfect, okay, all right,
we
so
can get that back to you for the next meeting.
that sounds perfect.
I mean, if there's a Hail Mary we can throw on this, launch it. But, if there's some 2% chance of something coming through, I don't see a problem with kind of doing that at the same time as prioritizing. But yeah, I think it has to we have to look at prioritizing and finding other sites, because it sounds like we just can't reasonably rely on something to fill that gap.
Right.
We can hope, we could take whatever shots at that in the meantime, but and hopefully something will come.
All right, so I think we'll be looking forward to Gateway putting together a couple of those. Was there anything else that needed to be discussed about this? Any other questions or comments about it?
Just procedurally, it's indicated that it's pretty simple request to reallocate. We just need support of the local politician in the town. Back off with the town on that. So to find something that's comparable, I think we'll. And you can always, knowing the number for this now, put it back into the
Exactly, exactly. Now that we know what it costs, exactly. Anything else, Dan, that you need to tell us? Okay, I think under new business now, we have a stormwater ordinance presentation. Yeah, Dan's staying for executive session.
Good evening. Mike Albright, Gateway Engineers. I'm here to talk about the town stormwater management ordinance recommendations. For a brief history on how we got here. So the previous stormwater engineer had reviewed the stormwater ordinance and made some revision recommendations. So town staff asked us to not only provide a peer review of those recommendations, but also give our own high-level review of the ordinance, with our main focus on addressing some of the issues with the current ordinance. So here's some of the issues that we identified. First, so applicants requesting the same modifications due to rigid design standards don't allow for flexibility in the stormwater design. So such as certain slope or grading requirements for ponds, for swales. Second, length and complexity of the current ordinance causes confusion for applicants and increases the amount of time and resources required by town staff to address questions. So a lot of just definitions, extremely detailed, which in turn creates an inefficient design and review process. And then also design standards and definitions that don't align closely with our other commonly referenced stormwater management design guides, such as the PADP Stormwater Manual and also Allegheny County Act 167 Model Stormwater Ordinance. So again, that just ties in that last point of added confusion and inefficiencies. Also to add to that point, the town's always been progressive and ahead with stormwater, always had their own ordinance before anybody else had one. So now that other municipalities have caught up and use these guides as their template, it's really just trying to match up with some of those definitions and vernacular. Touching the issues. So here's some of the goals we're hoping to achieve. So first, provide design flexibility for the applicant while maintaining the integrity of the existing ordinance. So I think this is important to note because we're talking about ways to make the ordinance easier and to navigate in a more streamlined process. But doesn't mean we're trying to loosen design standards. We're just hoping to incorporate more common sense to it, understanding that every project's different, creates its own challenges and opportunities. Number two, so provide guidelines for applicants to assist with navigating the ordinance. This is maybe as much a benefit for town staff as it is for the applicant, but just looking for ways to streamline the design and review process to eliminate a lot of the questions and the confusion. And then finally, also promoting green infrastructure design techniques where possible. So ultimately, you want to treat stormwater at the source. So, tying to the first goal and providing designers with a little more design freedom and flexibility. It will result in more green infrastructure BMPs in the long run. All right, so touching on the goal one here, provide design flexibility for the applicant while maintaining the integrity of the existing ordinance. So suggesting just implementing the recommendations that were outlined in the project status report that we put together. And I do have copies of that if anybody wants one. I don't know if it's in your packet or not, but so we did agree with a lot of the recommendations that were made from the previous stormwater engineer, but did have a few additions here. So first, just standardizing and simplifying some of the definitions in the ordinance. Also standardizing pond and vegetated channel slopes and freeboard requirements. So previously they required like a 4-to-1 slope minimum. So we're suggesting 3-to-1 slope for ponds, 2-to-1 for channels. Also applying a 50% release rate to 1-year and 2-year storm events. So this was actually also suggested by the previous stormwater engineer. We're in agreement with that requirement. Revising small project stormwater management thresholds and requirements. And we'll actually we'll see on the next slide, you'll see a table that was created for that. And then finally, sizing conveyance systems to handle, so that's actually a typo, should be a 100-year storm event. But we're suggesting sizing conveyance systems to handle the 100-year storm event and requiring inlet capacity calculations. So that last point, we feel that aligns more with the kind of storm events that we see nowadays, which are the high intensity short burst events. Not so much the downstream facilities that are the issue, but rather the infrastructure to capture and convey stormwater from roadways and properties. That's the real issue. So we believe that last point helps address that. So goal number 2, provide guidelines for applicants to assist with navigating the ordinance. So the first point, creating that table outlining the small project stormwater management section of the ordinance, outlining the requirements for applicants based on thresholds for new impervious area and area disturbance. So currently it's kind of a vague guidance on what's required and when. So this adds a little more clarity to it. Also includes areas that don't disturb a lot of land, but are adding a lot of good bit of impervious area. And then our second goal there, creating a flow chart for applicants to follow to help guide them through the correct sections of the ordinance. For example, an applicant would follow the correct flow path or ordinance section based on whether they're submitting a small project, new development, redevelopment. We did throw a draft together for that, but it'll hopefully help guide applicants in the right direction without getting lost in the ordinance. And then finally, last goal, promoting green infrastructure design techniques where possible. I touched on this before, but really just reducing the strict design standards for specific BMPs to align more with commonly referenced design guides. We're hoping to encourage more green infrastructure design practices. So example given, reducing the slope and freeboard requirements for vegetated swales to align with DEP standards. That'll encourage and allow applicants the opportunity to design vegetated swales over standard storm sewer conveyance systems. If you have a narrow site that wouldn't allow for the current 4:1 slope requirement for swales, you'd instead design the storm sewer inlet system. But by reducing that stricter requirement and aligning more of DEP's requirements to a 2:1 slope, you provide more flexibility to the designer, and in turn you provide the opportunity for a more environment-friendly design. That's the quick little overview there. Any questions?
We did do a significant walkthrough with Shelley and our technical staff to go over every inch of the ordinance, which I know is really interesting to everybody. It's great reading material, but I think the goal, and Mike has talked about here, is to make it practical while not sacrificing any of our standards. I think the big one is the 50% release rate on the 1 and the 2 year storms. So that's a more stringent requirement.
That's the majority of your storms too. About 98% of your storms are those smaller storm events.
So getting past all the other smaller little technical things, that's probably a major issue.
And the conveyance system, I'd say,
Yes.
capturing, collecting the water on the roadways and properties.
So we'll, and realize that the impact of this is not just the developers, but it's the local people that are doing additions to their homes, or they're doing other small projects that might not be the same size as a development. Developers that do any work over an acre are subject to an NPDES permit, and they have other requirements where they have to follow along DEP guidelines in addition to dealing with the town's requirements. So we think it's a good upgrade, very technical, but we can answer any questions if you have them. Carl.
Does it make the process longer for a developer if we change these things, or does it make it easier?
Should hopefully be easier, a little more straightforward.
In a shorter time frame for approval? Or about
And
the
hopefully
same?
less questions, less back and forth because of town staff.
Yeah. What about cost wise versus other municipalities? Like if we change these things, would then, if a developer did work in McCandless, they would have a higher dollar amount into their stormwater
I
system?
would say it's pretty comparable. around
Pretty
the county
comparable.
now.
Yeah, I'd say yeah.
Yeah, so what, I mean, the evolution of stormwater was that nobody had an ordinance. Now everybody has an ordinance, and everybody pretty much follows the model ordinances. So it's pretty much uniform application throughout, whether you're in McCandless or somewhere else in the county.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Any other questions? I'd like a special thank you to Councilmember Sponholz, who has worked very diligently on this for a very long time with our engineers.
And the stormwater subcommittee.
On renovating this. I don't have any other questions. So the next step would be to present this for adoption.
Yes.
Do we have to have a public hearing on it? Okay,
We'll report back.
Yes.
okay.
I'm thinking no. You
It's
can-
not zoning, so I think not, but we'll confirm.
Okay. All right, so we'll get back to you on what happens. Oh, sorry, Councilman.
No, this was adjunct question, because I think I misstated earlier. Were we planning on giving, because one of the other things that has been discussed in the stormwater subcommittee is the concept of a stormwater utility, which I think I mentioned earlier. I thought I misspoke. We do also, our engineers have,
Let's let her talk.
no, I'm just suggesting, I just don't want to lose sight of it at some juncture when it's convenient for council. At this point, it really, the information put together by our engineers, it's a PowerPoint, it's informational as to what a stormwater utility is, what neighboring community, in the region are doing. So it's not necessarily a for decision kind of thing. It's an informational, educational presentation.
Dan said that he could present that at the next meeting if the council would like to, so that
It's
it gives
definitely,
us some guidance going into the budget
Yeah,
process as well.
it's, I think it really has to do with what council's agenda is and when and if they want to make time to hear more about that topic.
Let me know if that's the recommendation from the subcommittee, and if it is, then we can talk about putting it on the agenda.
Sure.
Okay. Anything else? Okay. All right, 9B, we have a couple of resignations. The floor is open for a motion to accept the first one. Yes.
I move to accept Lamar Williams' resignation from the Planning Commission.
All right, is there a second? Okay. Mr. Williams is moving from the Planning Commission to the Technology Committee. So he's still staying in service to the community. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. We will be posting that opening for Planning Commission. All right, the floor is open for motion for 9C.
Madam President,
Yes.
I will move to accept Dick Schnuff resignation from the FDPC.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor indicate by saying yes.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. All right, the council, the nominating committee for a junior council member has a recommendation. I will be presenting that to council. First, I would like to say that we had amazing candidates. The students that we had was a very difficult decision. We had 9. All right, 6. All right, maybe I'm thinking of personnel. We had 6. It was a very difficult decision. But after and the way this works is the nominating committee puts out a nomination, but other council members can also nominate if they preferred someone else. So the nominating committee moves to appoint Gannon Sprinkle as junior council member for 2021-22 year.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Before I take a motion to adjourn, I wanted to let everyone know that we'll be having an executive session to discuss real estate matters and that there will be no further town business this evening. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All right, all those in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, motion carries. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.